right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to yet another League Apps Global Sports Venture Studio Town Hall Pro Sports event. Very excited to be here. My name is Kyle Bunch. I am here for representing RGA and the Global Sports Venture Studio. We are an organization that works closely with pro sports organizations, teams, leagues, as well as the corporate side of sports, whether that's media or enterprise kind of sponsors and partners, really looking for shaping the future of sports, looking for innovation, looking for opportunities to push sport forward, both for fans and athletes. So really excited to be here today and talk about, the ways that all of us as leaders in the space can be driving growth through investment in the community, ways that we can all implement programs that can bolster our connection to fans and young athletes and play a positive role in the community, but ultimately lead towards real growth for each of our organizations. So I want to go ahead and welcome a really great set of panelists that I have with me today. And I want to go ahead and let each of them introduce themselves, their organization, and the role they play there as it relates to today's topic and just more broadly. So all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and start with Dionna Widder from the Houston Dynamo and Dash. Dionna, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Kyle, as well as LeagueApps. My name is Dionna Widder, and I serve as the Chief Revenue Officer for the Houston Dynamo of the MLS and Houston Dash of the NWSL. I've spent a majority of my career actually in the NBA prior to joining the Dynamo and the Dash. I spent time with the Indiana Pacers, the NBA League Office, and the Cleveland Cavaliers prior to arriving here in Houston. Thank you again for having me. I look forward to having this great conversation.
Awesome. Thrilled to have you. Thank you again. Nate Martinez from the Utah Jazz, you're up.
Yeah, I echo Dionna's thoughts. Thanks for having me. It's excited to be here. I'm the Director of Fan Development for the Utah Jazz and Smith Entertainment Group. So we operate the Utah Jazz here in Salt Lake City and also the Salt Lake Bees, a minor league baseball team here. And we oversee our youth development programs. So everything youth related falls under our umbrella, from current programming to new opportunities, and just having the opportunity to connect with kids in the community and make the Jazz and Bees a bigger piece of what we do here in Utah and Salt Lake City. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you, Nate. And then John Babul from the Atlanta Hawks. Welcome.
Yeah, Kyle, thanks for having me, and thanks for everyone tuning in. Thanks for League Apps. Excited to be part of this. I'm the Vice President of Basketball Development for the Atlanta Hawks. This is my 9th season. Responsible for all of our community basketball initiatives and work very closely with the Executive Director of the Hawks Foundation, doing a lot of community work here in Metro Atlanta. My background is grew up around basketball. My father was a coach. Played my college ball at Georgia Tech here in Atlanta, and then went on to be a high school athletic director, a high school coach, and a collegiate basketball coach at the Division I level. So I'm a basketball guy, but now on the business side of things and enjoying doing great work in the community here in Atlanta, and I look forward to the discussion.
Great. And then lastly, our friend from League Apps here, Jeremy Goldberg. Jeremy, welcome back.
Thank you, Kyle. It's great to be here, and we appreciate RGA and the Global Sports Venture Studio being part of this. My name is Jeremy Goldberg. I'm the president and quarterback at LeagueApps. I stopped playing quarterback in the 8th grade, but I still claim the title. And LeagueApps is the operating system and community for the youth and local sports industry. I'm also a self-proclaimed youth sports futurist to predict what's happening in youth sports. It turns out you need no professional qualifications to call yourself a futurist. But I do sit in the middle of a lot of data and insights and conversations. And actually the start in a lot of our thinking around pro leagues and pro teams engagement in youth sports started with RGA and the venture studio that was done with the LA Dodgers. And after spending an extensive period of time with them, we now work with about 70 pro teams. And I have the vantage point to appreciate how great our panel is, and two, to believe strongly in the opportunity that pro teams and pro leagues have to influence the future of youth sports. So it's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for the introductions. And, as I sort of teed up in the upfront here, I think, what's exciting about the conversation here today, I think all of us, as we, you hear it in the introductions, everybody here who's working in sports, certainly we're doing it because we have a passion for sports, the excitement, all the things that come with it. But it is as much about the role that I think we all know sports can play in our communities, at the individual level, at the community level, and I think for today's purposes, while certainly all of us are very focused on that, also recognizing that there is a very real business opportunity, business imperative to the things that we're doing. But I think to get things started, I would love to hear from each of you, and maybe we'll start with John. But go down. I want to go down the line and talk about within your respective organizations how you view. Really, ultimately, how you view your organization, their role in the community. How do you see yourselves as a force for good? What are your responsibilities to the community and to the fans? John, do you want to talk about that from a Hawks perspective?
Yeah, sure, Kyle. And you took the words right out of my mouth. Tony Ressler and Jamie Gertz, our primary owners, they say all the time, we want to be a force for good in the Atlanta community. And what I manage with the Hawks is our community basketball initiatives. And we're really just aligning with the corporate strategy. So I would stress it starts at the top, and everything we do trickles down from our ownership, our leadership, our executive committee. But we're doing everything in the community from in terms of youth basketball, from tournaments to leagues, to coaching education, community court builds. It's really about showing up for the community, and our hashtag True to Atlanta. This gives it teeth, and we're building relationships not only with youth, but with coaches, with influencers, with people that are making a difference in their respective communities. So if I could stress anything, it's really been about the people we meet and how we make that connection. And we're not, we're hardly ever driving it with a sales approach. It's more about just relationship building. Let us learn more about you. How can we help you? And we're the Atlanta Hawks, and we're part of this community, and we're here to grow together. And at the same time, let's have a great basketball experience around our NBA franchise here in Atlanta.
And Nate, I'd love to hear from you. I know a lot of the initiatives that you're involved with have a long history within that community in Utah and Salt Lake City. Maybe talk a little bit about those and how they've also evolved there over the course of now a different ownership group, but a lot of continuity between those things.
For sure. And again, I'll echo what John said. We work so closely with our community relations team, and they're actually, we call them the doing good department. Right. I mean, that's what they're called. And that's really what we're trying to do, is do good here in the community. And you mentioned the ownership change. We had an ownership change last month, but it's just continuing. Right. Anyone, Ryan Smith mentioned that this is the first transaction he's ever done where there were three parties, right? The seller, the buyer, and the community. And the community had a huge piece of the conversation, right? And he really viewed it as the community's team as he was buying this. And it's been that way since 1979 when the Jazz moved here. And it's really been a community team. The owners viewed as a stewardship to take care of the team and really make it part of the community. Our programming is similar to what John mentioned, but the biggest thing we've done for many, many years is the Junior Jazz program, which is our ticket registration program, and our youth basketball program that we partner with local Parks and Rec departments, YMCAs, JCCs, and let kids play basketball with the Jazz branding attached to it. Each year we have about 65,000 kids that play Junior Jazz. So there's a lot of big reach that we've got there. And there's always room for growth through camps and clinics, through a lot of the things that John mentioned. We're trying to grow there. Look for new ways to connect the brand and connect the team to members of the community. And so first and foremost, it's more than just a saying. It really is what we focus on, what we believe in, we're trying to accomplish. And when we put the focus in the right place, we've seen success in a lot of different areas.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And Dionna, curious to hear from you. You bring a different perspective, both in terms of your role, certainly in terms of the organization or organizations that you're looking after, different sport, spanning men's and women's markets and teams, and having gone through a pretty significant rebrand and all with the team and club. So I'd love to hear your perspective in kind of maybe earlier days, building some of the initiatives, building some of the programs that, as Nate said, the Jazz have been doing for 35 years. Yeah. Talk a little bit about that and the role you see the Dynamo and Dash playing in that large, very large Houston community there.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny as you talk about going back 35 years. I mean, the MLS has only been around for 25 years. We just, we just celebrated our 25th anniversary as a league, and our club just, celebrated our 15th anniversary as a club here in Houston. So definitely in a different perspective and a starting place. But, ultimately, as an organization, we have the power and the platform of sports to do good in our community every single day. And I would say we're a team of individuals that are here to do just that. And so starting out, I would say that, our biggest thing in the perspective of how I've looked at it as a chief revenue officer, which is interesting to have this conversation from my perspective, is, revenue doesn't lead, it follows. And so we have to put a number of investments into our community to continue to build this up so that we become Houston's team. And that's key. And then we also have a unique perspective in terms of the cultural diversity in Houston, which is significant. We're the most diverse city in this country. And so for us, there's a number of areas and opportunities for us to elevate and be connected and engage in our communities at the international and the diverse level. And that's what we give back to and serve. And so we've built 9 mini pitches in underserved areas. We have 12 mini pitches that will be built over the next 4 years, creating safe places to play throughout Houston, but also inspiring play, which I think is really, really important, especially when it comes down to soccer. Soccer can be played at all ages. You can have a ball at your foot at the age of 2 years old. As soon as you can stand, you can have a ball at your foot. So we understand that the opportunity there is to connect and engage with our community, especially with youth, starting out at that age, and then obviously developing them up from there and being a part of their growth and development throughout their entire span of life, really, which is extremely significant. But right now, our biggest thing is continuing to find areas of opportunity and continue to be there at the right place, right time, so we can serve and grow.
Thank you for that. And then lastly, Jeremy, obviously you bring a totally different perspective, and you and I have known each other for some time. You've built LeagueApps, from the ground up into something that is a force for positivity and youth connection across so many communities. Interested to hear your perspective, having looked at it across sports, having looked at it across communities, and just, how you're seeing both, I think, maybe common threads throughout how different teams are working with you, and then maybe any insights or any things that you think are particularly interesting about where things have been sort of shifting, and where you're seeing maybe some promise of that future you alluded to up front.
I appreciate it, Kyle. And I think, if I step back and just talk about kind of the macro trends, one of the things I think that has happened under COVID is the things that were already true are just more true or have been accelerated, right? So when you think about the dynamics in youth sports, the things that we were looking at is the impact that technology would have on innovation and the experience, the consolidation of youth sports, where you literally have private equity firms that are coming in that are buying organizations. You have bigger roles of enterprise organizations that like pro leagues and pro teams that are getting more involved. So that I think that's been enhanced by COVID, and really the impact on access and community organizations, where the story of our society more largely, and certainly in the youth sports, is a tale of two stories, right? In the case of organizations that are more travel or club oriented, more enterprising organizations, they have weathered the COVID storm most effectively. Their families are desperate to kind of get back and participating. They often have access to their own facilities and spaces to be able to play. They're growing year over year. We're already seeing that kind of growth. And on the community recreational side, which was already a challenge in terms of access, it's extreme devastation. I heard a story yesterday in the context of a conversation at the NBA that in a park and rec league in the Maryland, DC area, they had 800 teams the year before, and they're down to 15 teams in the context of COVID, right? Teams, right? This is not individuals in terms of the reach. And we're seeing about 70% of the smaller community-based organizations in our platform have just ceased operations during this period of time of COVID because they haven't been able to adapt to Zoom or have access to spaces because they're dependent on schools and fields. So one is to appreciate the context of that. And I think in that context, I think there's a unique both opportunity and responsibility for pro teams in particular about what to do about that. And I think the root of all pro teams engagement, I think, starts with a community mindset, right? How do we make sure that the kids and families are having access to experiences, and what does that look like? And what at the same time, one of the things I think that pro teams I think that are most effective are folks that have an understanding more strategically of, we can't only speak about the community side, right? There's an entirely different experience that's happening on the more competitive side. So how do we have a more comprehensive strategy around our own programs and our ability to relate to what's happening? And what I see now is that the teams that have the broadest kind of strategic platform, with the highest level of strategic support in the organization, are taking a holistic strategy that says, one, we've got to meet families and participants where they are right now and make sure that there's a connectivity there and that we're helping ensure that they have the right kind of experiences. And then we also have to figure out where we fit in to really build capacity and solve some gaps. And I think the more that you have success in driving the business opportunity through youth sports in the short and long term, the more you can reinvest that kind of resources into the community efforts around access. And that's what it's going to take, right? Because there's no other actor within youth sports other than pro leagues and pro teams, and maybe some brands that have a strategic lens to the future of participation, because every other organization is just thinking about it around their participants, around their teams. But the clubs have to care, right? They have to care about what's happening in their community and the broader access to sport. And in that, I think lies some interesting opportunities for innovation. So that's certainly what I think the folks on this panel represent, and where I see is going to be a huge opportunity in the months and years to come.
That's definitely a great transition. Definitely didn't want to go too far into this without acknowledging the obvious, kind of big issue that we're all looking at. We were talking before the call got started of, here we are coming up on a year worth of our lives being disrupted, a lot of things being shut down or definitely altered. And I do want to get in a little bit to some of the things that have had to adapt, knowing that a lot of these programs that we're all talking about have a huge in-person component that's obviously the most challenging now. But I think it'd be interesting just to hear, just even a philosophical level, hearing from each of you around how, as this all has played out, how your organizations have maybe changed their thoughts on or evolved their thinking on the role that they play in the community, certainly through this moment. And I wouldn't even limit it just to COVID. I think that the last year has shined a light on a number of issues, whether those are related to sort of social justice and inclusion, COVID, and a lot of the other things that have come on the back of that. So I'll just kind of go around, and maybe Nate, if you wanted to take this question first, how are you guys, adapting to this and changing the way that you think about the role or expanding the role that the Jazz can play within that community there?
Yeah, it's been a year for sure, and through all the changes and the challenges we've had, we've seen some good things, which has been really, really fun to see. You mentioned adapting programming. We've had to find a way to survive and to exist when in-person programming isn't allowed, right? Isn't feasible to do. And so virtual has become a big part of what we're doing. And we've had the opportunity to reach so many kids who we never would have reached otherwise, right? We've had kids. We started running virtual clinics back in the summer of 2020 to replace our in-person clinics. And so far, over the virtual clinics we've run over the last 7 months, we've had kids from 26 states and 4 countries come to these clinics we're running. And so kids who otherwise would never have any connection with the Jazz brand have found a way to connect, right? We've got some international players on our team. Joe Ingles from Australia, and just different ways and different places that they're coming from. It's been really fun to see the fan connection grow outside of just Utah, right? Where obviously our base and where our diehard fans are, but there are Jazz fans all over the place. And to give them the opportunity to come and be a part of our programming and of the brand and of the team, where otherwise, without this, it probably never would have happened. That probably never would have been a piece of what we focused on. But we've seen the ability to do that and to grow that base and to reach fans in new and creative ways. You mentioned social justice initiative and how important that's been. And again, we've done a ton of things within the organization to try to support that. Make sure the players know that they have our support, that it's important that we see where they're coming from, and that we're giving them the chance to share their thoughts and feelings and making an impact in our community. It was cool to see Donovan Mitchell win the Community Assist Award for the NBA in the offseason with all the work he did with social justice and with his donation he made to his high school. So many things he's doing positively, trying to impact the community, and that's been who he's been since day one, since he got here to Utah. So it's been amidst a really, really tough year. It's been really fulfilling to see some of the good things that have come from it. Although it's been tough, it's been really fun to see some good and some really good positive things that have come, and things that will be part of our strategy and our programming going forward, even after COVID ends and we get back to more of a normal life.
Yeah, and kind of pulling out something there that I hadn't even necessarily that is cause for optimism in my mind. And John, for you, knowing you guys have done some things to put together a lot of virtual programming, both, I think it sounds as though basketball side, but also just keeping people active and the kind of base of how we all get through this. Interested to hear about those and how you see those similarly laying a groundwork for how your initiatives can evolve coming out of this, things that'll stick with us and stick with the Hawks organization and its community after this.
Yeah, it's we're 10.5 months in since the NBA shut down, and I think everyone on the call, kind of flipped our existing business models, upside down. And so we're doing it. I mean, we're on this call right now, brainstorming, talking, sharing ideas about, what we're doing in the business to grow, financially, but grow our fan base. And what we did was we started a program called Hawks at Home. You can see the background here. It's, fundamentals and fitness, and it's really about stressing the importance of having fun through the sport of basketball. But what Nate said about access, it's blown the lid off of restrictive access, because this program is free. We do a program every Thursday at 5 p.m. That's, it's probably 20 minutes of fitness related exercise without a basketball, and then we do some skill work that children can do from the confines of their home. They just need internet access and a little space to work. And, some families have taken to it and done it together with a brother, sister, mom, dad. So it's been a good thing for us. And I think the silver lining there is we're going to come out of this with 2 tracks. I mean, we're going to do in-person activation like we always did before. And now we know we've actually connected with more fans in the last 10 months in the community basketball space than we did previously in the previous year. I mean, Coach Pierce, Lloyd Pierce, our head coach, did 10 consecutive weeks of 90-minute clinics on Wednesdays during the first 2 months of the pandemic. And we had 5,000 coaches at all levels engage in that platform, from college to high school to community to AAU. All these coaches came on, and you build that connection and that touch point with these influencers in their community. And that's kind of the silver lining there. 50,000 youth have gone through Hawks at Home programming since the pandemic hit. We have a partnership with Atlanta Public School System that we're working with their PE teachers and providing access, and there's 50,000 students there. And so I think for us, it's been a blessing in disguise in terms of knowing where we can go. It's been challenging for sure. Not everything we've tried has worked. But I've probably spent one time face to face with our owner, Tony Ressler, in the 5 years that he's been here. I'm in community basketball, so to get 30 minutes with our owner, who's a self-made billionaire in the investment space, my takeaway from that was, he made a statement that, some could say that investing, John, in this space is the best value of the dollar long term for our business growth and our position in our community. And I've chewed on that for 10 months now. And Tony Ressler, our owner, he wants to do well in our community. He wants to be a force of good, but there's something to be said, like he said, the investment. And I know Nate said it earlier, Dionna, you said it. How do we invest in our community? And in return, that's going to invest in the strength of our long-term business. And that's what we're doing here in Atlanta. And I'm happy to be a small part of it.
That's great. That's great. And Dionna, I saw you nodding quite a bit. Definitely interested to hear your perspective.
Yeah, as I say, John almost took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, the investment you make in your community overall will come back in multitudes of time over the years. And we're doing very similar things to what John is doing in Atlanta with the Hawks. And as Jeremy put it, it's innovation and thinking about innovative ways to connect and engage at the youth level. Specifically at the youth level in this conversation. And so we also launched a program called Soccer Starts at Home. So very similar. And we actually launched it prior to COVID, which was interesting. We had teamed up with a world-renowned soccer development coach out of Japan. He's actually American, but he's out of Japan, named Tom Byers. And he created this program called Soccer Starts at Home. And so we partnered with him to create this program, which really empowers the parent to become and get more involved as a coach. And so we have a catalog of programming and skill development skills, as I said, as early as 2-3 years old, putting a ball, size 1 soccer ball at their foot, and starting to build up a comfort level with the ball, and really starting to program in sort of this concept of ball mastery. And so by the time that they actually get to a field and start kicking the ball, they've already had the build up in skill about how the ball relates to their foot. And so we were very lucky that we had already started that program. I think it was December of 2019. And then with COVID, it allowed us to accelerate it significantly and get it more built into our Diesel's Skills Builders, which is our mascot sort of program. And this has allowed us to expand our reach, make a greater impact. We're also partnering with our Houston Independent School System, KIPP school system. So some of the largest school systems here in Houston, where we're also in doing these like parent ignition activation sites where we're hosting parents, teaching them the program, having them understand and show them what happens through this development. So you get sort of a buy-in with the parent to understand their role in the role they play. And then they then share the content with their children. We're reaching over 65,000 children and youth in this program. And it's absolutely incredible. If you think about, my time back in the NBA at the beginning stages, you're always trying to get people to come to you. And there's so much valued so often that people come to your arena, your stadium. But the true value is going to them and meeting them where they are and being a part of their lives versus them being just as much a part of our organizations. And that investment is the key here in terms of our opportunity to make an impact, but also to continue to grow our fan base. And then ultimately you'll see an investment and a return on that investment for years to come.
Yeah, and it, common thread I hear through all of this, and Jeremy, you sort of touched on it up front of, like we've seen across business that, a lot of these problems only, or a lot of the things we've seen have sort of been accelerations of trend lines we saw before, a lot of which technology play a key role in both the acceleration and the response and how we have to move quickly to adapt. You're the founder of a technology company yourself. You've got a platform that you guys continue to build on and evolve. How has your perspective and product had to evolve and change in response to everything that's been going on?
I think when I think about our approach and as we think about technological kind of innovation, Jeff Bezos was in the news yesterday that he's stepping down from Amazon as CEO. That's unbelievable. He built a $1.7 trillion company, which is just mind blowing. I think their new business, AWS, through the CEO is coming from, is a $50 billion revenue company. That's just a unit that they managed to create. So when you think about innovation, he said something that's really interesting where he said, people always ask what's going to happen in the next year or two that's different that I should capitalize on. What's the trend? And his response was always, that's the wrong question. He's like, what's going to be the same in 5 years? What's going to be the same in 10 years? Build things that will be enduringly true. And so when I think about how we've thought about this, as much as there's been trends that are accelerated, it's more just about what are our core beliefs and convictions that technology is a means of delivering or enhancing that. So one is just the belief that the youth sports experience will increasingly be impacted by technology, not just the operational side, but the actual experiential side. And so you all, I think all the panelists all alluded to kind of some of the virtual based programming. And I think that's here to stay, right? I think that there's a hybrid where I'm already experiencing this now where there's not gonna be snow days that our kids are gonna have. It's gonna be like, oh, you're gonna be on Zoom, right? So there's not gonna be rainouts, right? Like there's gonna be this notion of this integration of technology into the experience, the at-home kind of training, the ways of enriching that experience, deepening that experience that I think has the promise of hopefully making the experience better. So that's the first thing, right? And I think esports is a harbinger of what's to come because all esports is video gaming that's taken the best of youth sports and brought it into the environment, right? It's leagues, teams, and tournaments with video games. We actually have to borrow from the video games when we think about the level of interactivity or engagement that technology offers. So I think that's one kind of thing that's influencing how not only how we're building our core platform, but basically the vision of an open platform so that there's all kinds of integrations that could live on top of that and building capabilities. So, there becomes the recognition of saying, oh, wow, because you're involved in this youth experience, you get access to this content, you get access to these kinds of tools without having to go to lots of different places, right? A seamless kind of integrated environment. So that's one of the bets we were making that we've doubled down on. I think the second thing that we think a lot about is There are going to be new kinds of partnerships and relationships. And so as we think about our technology and the flexibility, how are we supporting that? On the community and recreational side that was alluded to, that devastation is going to open up new means of people getting involved, right? So park and rec departments are going to outsource their programs. High schools are going to outsource their programs. They're going to be looking for different kinds of partners and providers. So how do we think about the capability of managing organizations that are able to kind of run different kinds of programs and support those kinds of new kinds of partnerships? We also are seeing a lot of acquisitions, right? Where people are literally buying up companies. And one of the things that we anticipate is there'll be pro teams that say, hey, there's a great organization in our area. They're great operators. They're struggling, having challenges. Why don't we buy them? Why don't we bring them into our network formally or through an affiliate network? And how does technology support that kind of integration or cooperation, where I think that the lens of the pro teams and pro leagues is so powerful. And then I think the third is how we're supporting youth sports as being not just about wins and losses, but the more holistic experience of what sports has to offer. And so one of the ways we think about that is through access, right? How do we make sure our technology gets in the hands of organizations that wouldn't otherwise be able to afford it? We put out a goal a year and a half ago now to reach 500,000 kids within 3 years to have access to our technology and to support access. And we do a lot of work with the Major League Baseball and reviving baseball in inner cities, as well as our own grant making. And we've crossed 200,000 kids that are being impacted through those kinds of programs. And that's a place where we realize one of the ways to close the gap is to give kind of free capacity building to those kinds of organizations and help other kinds of pro teams, pro leagues support that capacity. And then in return, get access to that data to make sure those organizations are delivering really powerful outcomes against that kind of support. So, as we think about our platform and the way we think about innovation, it's that kind of integration to support all the new kinds of innovations that are going to happen. And it's also the ability to support the new kinds of combinations and partnerships that are going to emerge. And it's also being mindful of the access question and the way that we design our technology and design some of our kind of grant making and product capabilities. So that's kind of what we're focused on. And those are things that we believed before, but we've kind of doubled down on in the context of COVID.
Yeah, no, it's something there that, and we heard it from all of you thinking about, obviously in that role within a community that any team plays, it's this whole ecosystem, right? You talk about the different youth organizations that you're involved with. You talk about the different stakeholders within the organization that you're bringing to the table in these things. And you were kind of hitting on, I think, especially in a connected technology driven environment, that ecosystem has an opportunity, not unlike the audience that you reach, to scale. So I think the question I'm sort of driving towards is knowing the importance of corporate partnerships for each of your teams. It's, lifeblood for us, I think, especially at a moment like this where, the economic model is challenged and those corporate partners are essential in terms of how we maintain and build those relationships. So I'd love to hear from each of you guys at the team level about the role that your corporate partners play and even maybe how some of the corporate partner landscape looks different in this environment where some of these programs become that much more essential and take on new roles. I'll kind of leave it open. Is there somebody, anybody here from the group that maybe wants to talk a bit about, how you guys are interacting or changing the way that you work with your big corporate partners in that sense?
Yeah, I'll take the lead here. I oversee our corporate partnership, sales and marketing strategy. It's interesting right now as we talk about, youth development programming, we're continuing to build up our program. So we haven't sold, let's say, the assets and the accessibility to that piece yet. We want to see sort of scalable where it could go before we start to evaluate valuations in terms of investment levels. And we think as it grows, we'll be able to find the right partner versus somebody just attach their logo to, which I think is key here. We're looking for somebody who wants to integrate in, make a contribution, and is with us on that piece. But in terms of partnerships, and especially during this time, everybody is looking at ways in which they can create engagement with the community, but also with their audience and their actual consumer audience. And so here at the sports teams, we have a platform and ability to connect and engage in a way that, other avenues cannot. If they just do an ad on a website, it becomes clutter. So when it's connected to our brand, it allows us to make those engagements more meaningful because we're now connecting somebody's passion with their brand and then creating these opportunities. And so during this time, we've seen a lot of opportunity with our partners. We've seen growth, we've seen expansion, and we've been able to retain a number of our partners. And so I think they're in it with us in the long haul. And then we think about the connection on the community side, we've seen a shift where they want us to be more in tune of supporting them in their community initiatives just as much. And then the fact that they're partners with us and their investment goes into our community, there's a transference of sort of brand alignment that when you invest in the Dynamo and the Dash, you are a part of what we're doing as a community. So it's very important that we're doing more and we're elevating and amplifying the things that we're doing in representation of our partners, but also what are we doing with our partners in the community to support their initiatives as well, and then amplifying and elevating those things as well to make those connections and opportunities for them.
Yeah, it's interesting. If I hear you right, it sounds like part of it is, how this becomes more a part of the integrated whole versus I think a few years ago where it was kind of, guys hit on it earlier. It's like this corporate responsibility thing. It's over here on a side, and sure, we'd love some capital to help offset that, but it's kind of treated separately. It sounds like now it's becoming that much more a core part of the integral brand that each of you are managing.
Yeah, I mean, we're being measured about what we do, right? I mean, and what we do and who we are is reflection of our commitment to the community. And so those things are all completely integrated and throughout those partnerships.
That's great.
John, one thing which I was going to say
Jeremy.
that I think that when I sit from the vantage point I have, and I gave a talk about this yesterday, the first thing is if you look at brands that are in businesses that are having success right now, it's many of those are ones that are figuring out how to integrate impact with the business in their business model, and not like as an externality, but as a core part of what it is that they do. And you look at companies like Kind, which sold to kind of Mars for $5 billion. You look at Allbirds, which is a pioneer in I'm wearing Allbirds right now. These great shoes, I highly recommend it. Valued at $1.7 billion, right? Where they're advocates for sustainability and minimizing carbon footprint as part of the way that they built their brand. And so as pro teams in their ability to kind of position their franchises as one that integrate the idea of impact and innovation and what you do, I think it draws people in. Consumers want to be part of that. Brands want to be part of that. So you're the brand yourself that I think has the opportunity to do that. And I think something that John was saying earlier is that youth sports is kind of the tip of the spear for that. And at the same time, I think that is the mindset that the corporate partners you have are looking for as well. And when I think about the moment we're in as a country, and you reflect on the fact that we've got an economic crisis, we've got a health crisis, we've got a social cohesion crisis, and not to mention a broader challenge around social equity and discrimination and equal access. Those things are all happening at the same time, and people are trying to navigate that. And youth sports is such a powerful platform to address that, right? Even Joe Biden, I think his brother gave an interview to ESPN where he talked about how Joe himself, President Biden was impacted by youth sports. He had a stutter. It was the thing that helped him overcome that. He believes that sports is one of the places that people actually can agree on at a time of such division. And so I think the ability to articulate the programs that your clubs are doing in the context of all that, where this is a place where we're developing leaders, we're providing access, we're teaching people to be part of diverse teams. And in particular, if we have initiatives to make sure we're closing those gaps, youth sports becomes a really foundational strategy to not just the future of our businesses, but to the future of our society, right? That's why someone like Nelson Mandela talk about the power of sports to tell the world. So if you can tell that story, then you're giving this massive a tool to these corporate partners to be part of that, and it justifies kind of doubling down on the investments on the various strategies that we've heard today. So I just believe that there's a bigger story to be told about how youth sports is integral to the outcomes we want in our society, let alone in our businesses. And if we do that really well, it becomes a unique opportunity that hasn't existed before.
Nate, real quick, I know, looking at the Jazz, I remember one thing that stands out to me somewhat related was as everybody was selling those first round of NBA jersey patches, and you guys were the ones that had one that had a positive, it wasn't just some brand logo, it was focused on the message. And now with Ryan and the ownership group coming in, you talked about this sort of community as a stakeholder, and definitely interested on how that informs the way you guys work with corporate partners, across the board there in Utah.
For sure, and that's a great point, Kyle. Like, for those, just a little background on it, like our jersey patch on the Jazz jersey right now is a organization called Five for the Fight, and it was founded by Qualtrics, and our new owner Ryan Smith actually was the owner of Qualtrics, and they came up with this Five for the Fight concept to donate $5 to fight cancer, right? And so again, when they put the patch on the jerseys, it was new. It wasn't. They could easily put Qualtrics on there, right? Nobody knew what Five for the Fight was. But over the 3 years of the partnership so far, they've been able to raise $26 million for cancer research. And again, if you look at the things they could have done to promote their own brand, right, in that space, or putting their logo on there, but they saw something bigger and something more important than just exposure of their brand. And they continue to demonstrate that. And again, I think that's what youth brings. Like Jeremy and Dionna have said, I mean, people want that connection. They want to feel good about what they're doing. They want to feel good about what they're investing in. And youth gives them the chance to do that. And Qualtrics and that the partnership is a perfect example of how that worked for us. Within the youth space too. I mean, we've got some great partners. I know John Hawks also have recently partnered with Adidas, right? But it's a perfect, Donovan Mitchell wears Adidas shoes, and we've been able to incorporate that in junior jazz, into camps and clinics. Not only just give those to kids who come to our programs, but also, again, to give back to kids who need stuff, can't afford to come, and to build some community program and outreach through him and through Adidas, and really giving Adidas the chance to become a part of what we're doing organizationally.
Thanks, Nate. And good question. Yeah, John, go ahead.
No, Kyle, Nate just kind of teed me up with a fat pitch right there for a grand slam. So piggybacking on the Adidas comment, Trae Young, probably an NBA All-Star, one of the future stars of our league. He's an Adidas guy. And so naturally for us, we also have John Collins, our first round draft pick this year, Onyeka Okongwu, Gallinari. I mean, we have a core group of our players that are Adidas guys. And so kind of a microcosm of the value we can provide to a partner. We've talked about it at the macro level, but just last night, we started a series of 3 community coaches clinics, virtual coaches clinics presented by Adidas. And so in a time where, maybe there's no assets inside the arena, or they're not as appealing because the fans are not in there, Adidas jumped on, this virtual coaches clinic as an investment and an asset to connect with youth basketball players, and more importantly, the coaches in those communities. And so over the course of these, 3 weeks, we'll probably have 1,000 coaches go through the program, and times 10 players, that's 10,000 youth, hopefully being positively beneficiaries of some coaching education for these community coaches. And so where I'm going with that is, I don't think we can underestimate the value of doing, social good. And it's scalable. Like I just said, if you train 1,000 coaches and that word gets back to 10 of their players, now that's 10,000 youth that there's some touch point. It may not be face-to-face, but there is a touch point. And I think how that translates to business, and it's good business, is that I look at me, I want to be kind of like when a league director or a tournament director or a high school coach talks about the Hawks, they'll be like, oh yeah, John's my guy. He's my guy with the Hawks, or, that's my homegirl with the Hawks. I didn't give them anything really. I'm just, teeing up a relationship and providing a free platform. But the more people that in this community in Georgia that can say, yes, John's my guy with the Hawks, let me give him a call, that could translate to a team we need to fill in our Hawks Naismith High School showcase. That could turn into a, hopefully, and soon to be group nights back at the arena where, hey, I'd like to bring my 50 players, boys and girls out, varsity, JV, freshmen, to a Hawks game. Can you connect me with a sales rep? And that's kind of how it translates to business. So we're doing it out of a free platform. We're connecting a partner to it because they see value in connecting to the community and doing good for the community. It's a platform for our players to shine. Like our Onyeka last night was his first public appearance for a coaches clinic. You're talking about a guy that's 19 years old, and he goes on and he's in his sweet spot. We also had Landry Fields, our assistant GM, former NBA player, Renee Montgomery, WNBA champion, NCAA champion, and she's now a broadcaster with the Hawks. And so last night, 500 coaches tune in. They connect with the Hawks. They get 1 hour of education. And then tonight, they're going to turn on the TV and watch probably Trae versus Doncic. And Bob Rathman moderated our program last night. He's the voice of the Hawks. He'll be calling the game tonight. So these fans and these people that tuned in, these coaches, they're going to watch the game tonight and be like, you know what, that's cool. I talked to them last night. And now, there's a connection there. And now you want to pull for the Hawks. And I guess that's how I sum it up in value of how you can provide that to a partner. But we're talking about business and how you can grow your business through youth engagement. And I think that's, thanks, Nate, for teeing that one up, because that's just the perfect perfect analogy, I think, of how we're approaching it with our community.
Just to follow up on that, because I think a lot of love driving the business connection. You guys are doing a great job of just segueing into my next questions. I appreciate it. But following up there, obviously, I think we all are united in this kind of idea that doing these things can have this long-term impact on fandom. Can, the kid who gets time with a coach from the team early is that much more likely to be a fan for life. But how do you measure that success along the way? And that might be from the in-between points. How are we building towards the long-term fandom? And I'm open to stories either from a data-driven standpoint and looking at participation in things, as well as we were preparing for this, some of you shared some anecdotal stories too of kind of these moments of generational fandom that you've seen come through these programs and all. I'd be curious, any of you, I know Nate, I think I was stealing from one anecdote from you, but definitely want to hear from everybody about how you validate that these things are working, especially at a time when, let's face it, everybody's looking at every cost within an organization and trying to decide what makes sense and where do we place our bets. So Dionna, I see you go off mute, so let's start with you.
Yeah, I was gonna say right now at the Dynamo and Dash, we're still building the foundations there, but I would go back to my experience with the Cavaliers. I was at the lead of developing and launching our youth development program at the Cavs. I'm in partnership with our marketing team and some other youth individuals, development coaches on the Cavs side. And one of the things that we developed is we literally built the platform from a cradle to grave sort of initiative, and the power of CRM and utilizing it, which is something we didn't do, I would say, in the past. So when a kid gets programmed in, you want to get their information, you want to get them in the system, and you start to build a profile around the family. And so at that point, you're able to track in terms of how many programs are coming to. If they logged in to, your virtual programming today, you'd want to log in and understand and sort of create that journey sort of pathway of the connections. So for us, what we've started to do, are you registered for, Soccer Starts at Home, and then do you sign up, and come out to some games as we populate opportunities to come out to matches. So are you coming to games? Are you playing in our recreational leagues? And we start to see sort of the monetization, but also the fan journey, how engaged they are. And our communication then is also then programmed through Marcom and our marketing group to continue to engage with them with free programming, as well as a balance of potentially investment opportunities of buying merch, buying tickets, and engaging with our piece. So it started at the Cavs for me. We were tracking everything and using that data to measure sort of that fan journey. And we're at the beginning stages here in Houston of redeveloping a similar model to be able to see that fan growth.
And Nate, I do want to hear from you, because I loved some of the stories you were sharing, and I'm sure there's a data component or a way that you guys are quantifying these things as well.
For sure, it has been cool. I mentioned this is year 38 of Junior Jazz, and I'll take myself as the example, right? I grew up in Utah. My first time I walk into the arena is as a Junior Jazz kid, right? My dad takes me to the game. He's coaching our team, and we're going to the game, right? I have this interaction with the organization. I go in the building. I meet a player, right? And I'm hooked, right? It's there. I'm a fan for life. And ever since I was 5 or 6 years old, the Jazz have been a part of who I am, right? And so we have these 65,000 kids every year who are having that same experience, or that's what we're hoping to build for them, right? This experience where they can connect with the player or connect with the team or connect through a game. And then they start. And Dionna hit the fan journey of what we're trying to measure, right? And how we can see what they do from their first touch point with the organization. And a lot of data we have is through Junior Jazz. The first time they've come is through Junior Jazz or through a youth program, through a camp or clinic, is their first touch point with us. And then they grow, right? And we actually had the NBA come in a few years ago and do a case study of parents who played Junior Jazz when they were young and now have kids in the program, right? Because we had our beliefs that there's definitely a tie to that, and that, if you played when you're younger, you're going to be more of a fan when you're older. But the most interesting thing that we found is, again, these kids, as they grow, they're young, they come to games for Junior Jazz, they're coming to a few games a year. When they get a little older, the fandom continues to grow. They're buying merch, they're coming, they're doing a lot of things. Maybe during the college years, they kind of go away from the brand a little bit, maybe just to lack of funds, right? Poor college students aren't coming as much, but they're still engaged. But then they have kids, right? And that's where it really got interesting, in the fact that when they had kids and their kids started playing junior jazz, the tide just started all over again. The parents are re-engaged in watching, in buying merch, and coming to games. I mean, they're just tied right back into the brand through their kids. And so it's this generational tie to the team through youth programming. And it's really, really cool to see that. And again, we've always believed it, but to get some actual evidence that it's true. We look at our season ticket base of how many of those people that grew up in Utah played junior jazz. The numbers are extremely high. I mean, the majority of them played or coached or had some sort of affiliation with the program when they were young, and they attribute part of their fandom to that. So really cool to see. The thing that we've been able to do here is that, again, ownership and our upper management's got to see the investment as a long-term investment, right? If you're looking at short-term dollars in revenue, and what can we generate this year, right? There's probably ways to make more money than what we're doing with youth, right? But if we look at the investment and now having this big picture of, 38 years of history, there's no better investment, right? There's no better way to invest in and build fans and really connect with the community than through youth and through the programs we have. And so cool to see. It's also giving us a chance to step back and look and say, hey, where's the next step, right? We have a good start, but there are so many things that we haven't even touched. So many kids who maybe don't play basketball, right? If a kid's not a basketball fan, if he's not stepping on the court, what's his connection to the team, right? If a girl likes to dance, how are we connecting with her, right? Just different ways and things, and being able to take it to the next level. It takes that next step and build new programming to complement what we're already doing. Again, to really provide a way, and this is what we're trying to do through our youth programming, is provide every kid with a chance to interact with the Jazz brand. That's really what we're trying to do, and give them a meaningful experience, a meaningful touch point. And regardless of what their interests are or what they're interested in, how can we tie that back to the Jazz and give them an experience that they're going to remember and they're going to want to continue to create as they get older and as they continue on their path of fanhood.
Yeah, and John, I want to get you, specifically because you shared this wide range of initiatives that you guys have going on, and what struck me was you've kind of touched on everybody from coaches, boys, girls, all ages. I mean, you guys have what feel like a really comprehensive ecosystem of different initiatives. How do you guys analyze effectiveness? How do you think about all the ways that those fit together to build that kind of fandom and measure that over time?
Yeah, I think to answer your question, from a macro level, how do you quantify the investment? I don't know if there's a way to quantify it in terms of the holistic value. I think it's very qualitative, and I think I go more on a gut feel. I grew up a kid in Boston, a suburb of Boston, in the Larry Bird era, Larry Bird, McHale, and Parrish, and we hate the Lakers. And I can remember just my dad was a school teacher correcting, correcting his papers on the recliner. And me and my twin brother would be watching the Celtics every night. And it was there, it was present. I was aware of who the Celtics were. I was aware of Larry Bird. And so I take that, fast forward, 30 years. And we're in a market in Atlanta that's a transient market, generational fan building. We're not the Jazz. We don't have 50 years of junior Jazz. We don't have a team president that grew up through the program. We don't have a VP or director of youth basketball like Nate that went through the program. Atlanta is a different market. So I think you have to know your market. But we do know that, it's an investment in building generations of fans. And I think it's important to see, what do you stand for as an organization? And our ownership and our executives have clearly outlined what we stand for as a community asset. And now it's just about trusting in the process. And I'll emphasize process. To answer your question, kind of the tail end of that is we do have a process in our space in community sports. It's tournaments, it's leagues, it's coach education, it's our community court builds, it's our scholarship program. There's, like I said, our high school tournaments, our junior NBA qualifiers. We're doing 50 to 60 events per year. And that's the process in and of itself. And outside of sports, again, piggybacking on, what do you stand for as a company? I just jotted down some notes. I mean, our city edition uniforms, MLK across the chest, like a huge part of the fiber of this city, Dr. Martin Luther King. And we have, unity nights and True to the Dream Awards, where we're recognizing community stakeholders for doing great work in their community around Georgia and Metro Atlanta. We just opened up State Farm Arena for voting. We were the first professional sports organized to open the doors to State Farm Arena. Huge national news headlines, but it was about doing good and social good, and our civic duty as a professional sports program was to do that, and it was extremely successful, and we're proud of it. And that goes to like who you stand for. We just renegotiated, the notes on our practice facility with Black-owned banks. Black economic empowerment. What do you stand for in Atlanta? Well, we stand for it. We're giving teeth to it. Lloyd Pierce, our head coach. Social injustice. He's a leader and a stakeholder across the NBA and in moving the needle in that space. Tony Ressler, now new member of the NBA's board. The foundation, the NBA Foundation's board, Tony Ressler, our owner, is part of that. He does not have to do that, but we're giving teeth as an organization to our words and our statement, and I think you got to walk the walk. So in summary, I would say it's very qualitative, but you got to do the work and you got to have process. And I believe, just as a kid that grew up in Boston, at 4 or 5 years old, you hear the Hawks and you hear Trae Young, you're going to be a fan for life. And that, I think, is good business, and sports is the conduit to that.
Yeah, so many great things in there, including, I think the first jersey to find its way into the Pope's closet. So, that's one more accomplishment in there. Well, knowing we're almost at time, I want to close with one last question, and I'm going to have our resident futurist here and Jeremy kick us off. I've read some great things. I think, Tom Ferry with the Aspen Institute and Project Play has written a lot trying to sort of look at this as a moment, right? That everything has been disrupted. The upside of that is this is our chance to write the future as we look ahead to really, we have no choice but to shape something new and in this kind of restart moment. Kind of looking at that optimism, what do you see as the big opportunity as we do go ahead, where we could be a few years out if we do this right? And then I guess the build on that would be, but what do we need to get there? Whether that's resources, technology, investment, what would be the thing that can unlock the big opportunity? So Jeremy, why don't you start us out, and then we'll give everybody a chance to respond.
Yeah, so I think when you think about the opportunity that exists, and kind of where things are heading, I think what you see is a world in which youth sports already has some kind of challenges. It was a great experience just for some. There's others that weren't part of it. And I think that there's an opportunity to get more kids in the system. But that probably means less organizations, right? There doesn't need to be 100,000 youth sports organizations, right? And so what I think you see with the promise of consolidation, and in particular, I think the opportunity for pro clubs, pro leagues, is to engage and scale the kind of programs they're running directly, and then the ways that they're then in building capacity and supporting kind of grassroots organizations as part of that. So when I see the opportunity, I think it's basically saying more sophisticated organizations that brings a lens towards quality coaching, great kind of experiences, how they integrate technology into that. When you can offer that, and you're trying to focus on the entire ecosystem, I think there's a real promise of getting more kids to play. Because I think so much of our strategy, so much of our lens is through this lens of all the organizations that are out there. And when you see this kind of consolidation, that doesn't have to be a bad thing. If the right actors with the right intentions are filling those gaps of trying to think about how to scale their programs creatively and making sure that they're meeting the needs of the community. And I think one of the ways to enable that is technology is one of the ways to be able to create that kind of scale. And I think partnerships is the other. And through the right kind of partnerships and the right kind of infrastructure, it allows you to be able to manage those numbers. And what we see is organizations are getting larger and larger. And it's not that we don't need youth sports to professionalize from the perspective of the kids. They should be kids, but the people running youth sports should be professionals. And the people that are running pro teams and pro leagues already have that advantage. They're professionals, right? So bringing in that expertise and that lens is important. And the final thing is, everything we just heard on the last response is so powerful, because recognizing the long-term opportunity here, right? There's short-term value that you can realize, but the long-term value, when I've seen the data that shows that the number one predictor of whether you're going to be a fan of a sport, if we play the sport, and if you go to a game before age 5 and you play the sport, then the lifetime value is as high as 10 times higher. So not only are you making fans for life and more valuable fans for your community, not only does that create immediate opportunities, but you're going to make sure they have a better sports experience because you have the full weight and the credibility of what you offer as well. So I'm optimistic with the folks that we're looking at on this panel and others like them that are going to pick up the mantle and take advantage of the opportunity.
Well, I want to give everybody else a chance to respond. Thoughts, your note of inspiration and optimism, each of you, as we go through. Dionna, I'll let you start.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Jeremy. I think that we have an opportunity to be ambassadors of the game, of each of our individual sports. And I truly believe it's through those partnerships. And so through partnerships, providing sort of an expansion or an extension of what we can provide through the professionalism of these other programs. Right now, I would say there's just a lot of people doing their own thing, and there's no consistency in what is being delivered and the experiences of the youth in our communities. Therefore, this group of kids could have one experience and it could be negative, and we could just lose a whole audience of children that we have an opportunity to make an impact in. So how do we then create these very strategic partnerships in a way that we can make the impact that we have the ability to make? And so it's about building relationships and understanding and creating that trust there to then be the ambassadors that we have the ability to be. It's not, you have to strip away the territorial aspect of what's happening in youth sports and start to come together to understand the impact and opportunity in the long run here. So that's to me, that's the opportunity.
That's great. Thank you. Nate, how about you?
I mean, I just echo the thoughts that have been said, but I think, I'm just excited for the future. I mean, I think the biggest thing that I've learned through COVID and through this pandemic is that how important sports are to people, right? And how much they want them, how much they need them, how much they need to be part of people's lives. And we have that opportunity to provide that opportunity to kids and to families. And it's a pretty cool spot to be in, for sure. And I think at the end of the day, we can give people an outlet that they can't get anywhere else. They need this from a physical activity perspective to just a mental perspective. Sports provide things that other things can't. And I think looking at it through that lens and really seeing that vision and seeing that opportunity is going to give us endless opportunities, endless upside, endless growth in the future. And it's an exciting path to be on.
That's great. And John, bring us home.
Hey, it's been a great segment, man. This flew by. I would just say that and I'll have to thank LeagueApps. We started our journey looking for a new online camp registration solution, simply to run credit card transactions and help us communicate with our fans. And it's turned into so much more than that. LeagueApps and Jeremy, your team has been phenomenal in terms of adding value to our business. You created a website for our Hawks Basketball Academy and our community basketball initiatives that we're proud to pound our chest and say that this is awesome. It looks great. And it provides us a platform to really just celebrate and promote everything we're doing in the community. And I would say, before our relationship with LeagueApps, I was embarrassed to send people to our website because I knew we did good things, but it didn't, visually, when a fan looked at it, it didn't represent who we were. And so I think having pride in detail and the importance of that in our respective spaces, everything we do has to represent our brand. And that goes from the bottom to the top, and it goes from the smallest thing as a camp or clinic or coaches clinic site, all the way to hawks.com. And, without LeagueApps, I'm not sure we'd be where we are today in terms of growth and impact. So Jeremy, I did want to thank you for that. And he didn't pay me to say that. It's just true. And it's the business that we're doing. But right now it's for things like this, Kyle, Nate, Dionna, Jeremy, for me to be able to connect with y'all and have a face-to-face and learn, like it's so valuable. And that gives me hope. And I think I'll close with, this is a time now where it's tough. We're all challenged, but if you can have hope, I think that gets you to the finish line. And working with folks like you and knowing that there's great leaders and such smart, talented people driving the sports industry from professional down to youth, I think if we just keep doing this together, we're all going to come out of it better people and better in business. And so Kyle, thank you for hosting today. And I very much appreciated being part of it.
No, thanks to everybody participating. And yeah, my just last quick closing thought to build on everything, all those great responses would just be, having worked spent a lot of my career working across the corporate side of the business landscape, and as a way into sports, it's always striking that there are brands out there with seemingly infinite resources who would kill to have the level of passion and affinity that a sports brand has within its community and globally. And I think as we look at this moment in time, that is something that is difficult to buy, no matter how much you put into it. And so all of the people who are listening from different teams, that is really the sort of true superpower that I think all of you have, is this level of connection to a community and doing all of the things that we've heard here, the right ways of leveraging technology, leveraging partnerships. You guys can be a conduit for change that very few others can. And so that's what was exciting about being able to host this today, getting to spend more time with everybody here and thinking about, echoing those sentiments of everybody. It's been a challenging year plus, but I think sports has already responded well. And my optimism, like yours, is that we've laid some groundwork that can really provide a solid foundation for wherever we go in this decade ahead and beyond. Oh, John?
Kyle, I just had one question for the quarterback, Jeremy. Who we got this weekend, Brady or Mahomes?
I mean, it's going to be tough. I'm probably going to say Brady, not because of Brady, but because I feel like the defense in Tampa Bay is going to figure it out. So not that I don't believe in Mahomes, but they've had some pretty good game plans. So we will see. As a Dallas Cowboys fan, I'm just listening to the replays and watching the replays of 25 years ago. I'm gonna live in the past. That's what I'm gonna do.
Hey, you're the quarterback, man. We'll take that. I'm a New England guy, so I'm a Brady fan. I'm pulling for the Bucks.
Thanks, everyone.
Well, on that note, thank you to everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week and certainly the weekend and Super Bowl ahead. And thank you everybody for tuning in, and to all of my panelists for being here today and being part of the conversation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks everybody.